Welcome to True Crime with Strategic Eyes.
Strategic back again. What's going on, guys? I want to share with you guys a very interesting story today. This is the story about Taylor Cadle. Now, we talked about this a little bit on a live show we just completed just a few hours ago, where we did a walkthrough of the newest video that was made available of the Madeline Soto cases. But I wanted to give this its own show. I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to hear the full story on how Sheriff Grady failed a young victim of ex abuse. This young lady's name is Taylor Cadle. Taylor grew up in a very tough home environment. And for whatever reason, I think they get into it a little bit, but not too much. She was removed from her biological parents, and her uncle and his wife adopted her. That is when Taylor's ordeal started. I'm sorry. When I just thought about what this little girl went through, and it really touched me, and I apologize. Miss T is in the building, says allegedly speculating. So I apologize for that. The channel is allegedly speculating. So I want to jump into this, and I want to show you guys how Sheriff Grady failed this little girl. And I want to say one last thing. I keep saying Sheriff Grady failed her. Did Sheriff Grady personally fail this little girl? No, there's no evidence of that, at least no evidence that I've seen. But Sheriff Grady is a CEO. Sheriff Grady is a boss. He's an elected official who's been elected to run the sheriff's department down there in Florida. And so the buck stops with him. And before we get started, I want to tell you what gives me the ability to say that it's Grady's fault. And I'll tell you why. Because in my agency, and this may not be the policy for Sheriff Grady's agency, it should be, but in my agency, I can't choose to arrest a victim who I believe is not telling me the truth. I have to get approval all the way from the chief to be able to say that. And for me to be able to say that, I have to have verifiable evidence like text messages, phone calls, all types of like corroborating evidence to show that this person made a conscious effort to say that somebody else did a crime against them that they did not do. And I don't think that they met that bar in this case. They couldn't have met that bar in this case because this young woman was truly a victim of ex abuse from her uncle. There was no text messages or recorded phone calls where the young lady was saying, I'm going to lie on my uncle. I'm going to set him up and get him arrested for something he didn't do. That just did not exist, ladies and gentlemen. What did exist is that this little girl was being abused in the worst way multiple times. And instead of her being free from that and this uncle being brought to justice, they brought her to court. They charged her. They made her plead guilty. She was then put on probation. She was then sent back to the uncle's house where the abuse continued, where then she had to now take her own phone, download some special type of hidden app to record her uncle having full-blown intercourse with her. If that is not the most horrible thing you can put a victim through, I don't know what is. And it all happened under the watch of Sheriff Grady and under his tutelage, his rules and regulations, his oversight. And so even though he may not have been the one to say, I'm doing the investigation and I think she's lying, I'm going to charge him. He didn't do that. He's the sheriff. He doesn't do that. He still has to be held accountable for it because he's the one running the show. So now, without further ado, I want to go ahead and start playing this. And now you can hear it from the horse's mouth. You can hear it from this victim explain what she went through. Let's do it.
We're told if you're a victim of a crime to go to the police and report it. But what happens when they don't believe you? From the Center for Investigative Reporting, Rachel De Leon has the story of how far one child had to go to prove her innocence. And a word of caution, this story involves details of child sexual abuse.
In the fastest growing county in America, Polk County, Florida, its longest serving sheriff, Grady Judd, has a large media presence and delivers unapologetic, tough on crime messages like this one about an armed man involved in a car chase.
And he chose to die in a gunfight, we accommodated him. He said he wanted to go to heaven, we made the arrangements for him.
Running this fall for his sixth term in office, he's a popular sheriff, once invited to the White House by then.
Now, you know why I'm so hard on Sheriff Grady with this story? Because I like Sheriff Grady. I actually like him. I wish more law enforcement was pro Law and order, tough on crime. I said crime. Crime as Sheriff Grady. It's because he never apologized publicly. He never came out and said, you know what? The buck stops with me. We made a mistake on this little girl. I apologize. This will never happen again. These are the systems we're going to put in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. And I don't care what theatrics you put on TV and YouTube to better your political career. This is where your character truly shows. And the fact that Sheriff Grady never did that, well, I'm side-eyeing his character. I'm side-eyeing his character because you know what? Well, he's good at the theatrics, but are you truly a good person in your soul? That you could not come forward and say, I'm sorry to this little girl for what we're going to find out what his office did to her. It's about character, people. It's about morality, not showmanship. And this was an opportunity for Sheriff Grady to really shine and show how much of a stand-up individual he was. And he failed Taylor on this respect. Let's keep going.
President Donald Trump to discuss issues facing sheriffs, and later asked to join a federal council overseeing all programs related to missing and exploited children. He's made it his department's priority to go after child predators.
We'll go to the ends of the earth to arrest you if you victimize children.
What about Taylor? What about Taylor? You failed her? What about her?
Why punish me? What did I do for you to punish me?
But Taylor Cadle's extraordinary case raises questions about how, despite Sheriff Judd's tough-on-crime rhetoric, his department treated a child victim as a criminal.
Nothing that I did was I in the wrong.
I'm so
At all.
sorry for her.
Taylor had a traumatic childhood. The state took her away from her birth mother when she was 7 due to violence in a neglected home. After a year and a half in foster care, she was adopted by her great-uncle, Henry Cadle, and his wife.
Little cutie pie.
But within months, she says he began sexually abusing her.
Yes.
I kept it secret because going through foster care, it was already so much of a traumatic experience that I was scared to go back.
Totally understandable. And he played off of that. He played off of the dysfunction that this little girl went through and the fact that she had what seemed like a stable home. He used that to his advantage like a typical predator. This is what they do. They find out what your weaknesses are and they exploit it. That's what they do. Let's keep going.
Over the next 3 years, she says Henry Cadle used long car rides to abuse her off this road. One day in 2016, Taylor disclosed the abuse to an adult member of her church, which launched an investigation by multiple agencies.
Look at her. Look at this little girl. Look, she has to be like 13 years old right there. Disgusting.
How old are you?
Disgusting what this little girl went through. And this looks like a forensic interview that they're doing right now. That's a social worker, and it looks like they're doing a forensic interview.
Almost 13. I'll be 13 in October.
That week, Taylor was asked to recount what happened to her several times. In a recorded interview with a child welfare worker, she went into detail, hoping she'd be believed.
And he pulled over on the side of the road and told me to get in the front seat.
But in a separate interview recorded by Sheriff's Detective Melissa Turnage, the tone turned confrontational.
If you're mad because you got your phone taken away, let's say that now and be done with it.
From the get-go, she was rude. Simple terms, rude. When she continuously asked me the same question over and over, I almost told her she should probably write down what I'm saying because I didn't feel like she was listening.
Turnage treated Taylor less like a victim and more like a suspect.
Do you want to go live back in foster care?
Look at that.
Because more than likely...
She's coercing her into recanting. Like, listen, you can't solve every case. There's tons of cases that I haven't solved that I have either marked as I've exhausted all my investigative leads or, they're unfounded or whatever. Like, you can't solve every case. Maybe there's a case out there, I don't know, that really did happen, but I just couldn't prove it. There just wasn't enough evidence to prove it. That's one thing. That's the way it works. There's no way around it. You can't solve every case. Not every victim is going to get justice, but it's how you treat the victim along the way that matters. So maybe at this point, they didn't feel like they had enough evidence to arrest the uncle, but that doesn't mean you have to treat the victim like she's a liar or like she's the criminal, like she's the culprit. There's no excuse for that. There is absolutely no excuse for the way that this woman is talking to a minor. Make it make sense. Let's keep going.
If he's arrested, they're not going to let...
And I just want to point this out. She's coercing her like, you want to go back to foster care? Like, basically, you better shut your mouth. You better stop making these allegations up. Otherwise, you're going to get removed from this family. They're going to send you back to foster care. Little does this deputy, investigator, detective, whatever she is, whatever they call themselves down in Florida, little does she know that probably would have been a better deal for this child than staying in the home of that uncle. But let's keep going.
Do you want to go live back in foster care? Because more than likely, if he's arrested, they're not going to let you stay there. But if it's not the truth, you're fixing to hurt a lot of people.
Everything I told you earlier.
No disrespect, I'm not saying, but this detective lady is talking like she's a pedo. I mean, I'm not saying she's a pedo. Absolutely not. I'm not in any way trying to disparage her. I'm just saying that's what the pedos say. And if she's a sex crimes detective, I don't know if she is or not, she would have heard that line 1,000 times from victims and perps. She would have heard that already. So why is she talking like she's a pedo trying to groom somebody to be victimized by her? That's exactly what they said. You know, what did he say? Oh, you know what? You'll go back to foster care if you don't do this for me. Oh, if you tell on me, nobody's going to believe you. And you might get sent back to foster care. Is that what you want? Is that what you want? That's how pedos talk. Why is this detective talking like that? Let's keep going.
It's not a lie.
Still, Turnage concluded that Taylor made it up. The detective wrote that she couldn't find Henry Cadle on gas station security footage buying condoms like Taylor said he had. And she couldn't pinpoint the location of the assault on that long stretch of road.
Every interview.
How would you be able to pinpoint the exact location of the assault on the road when the girl is telling you that it's happening in a car? It doesn't matter. Your crime scene is not the side of the road. Your crime scene is the car. This lady just wanted to victim blame. That's all she wanted to do, to blame this little girl and make this little girl out to be a liar. And guess what? She was successful in it. It worked. It worked. And you know what? The same punishment that this little girl had to go through, that detective should face that. Because there's one thing if you say, I don't have enough evidence to arrest this guy, no problem. It happens. It's another thing when you go the extra mile and have the victim arrested and now the victim has been turned into the perpetrator. Now I think you need to face some serious consequences. Let's keep going.
That we talked, she made me out to be a liar. And I told her time and time and time and time again that I am not the liar here.
There is no excuse for the manner in which this case was handled.
Jerry Seitz, a forensic expert who's worked with thousands of child abuse cases, listened to the interviews between Turnage and Taylor. She says Turnage's techniques were inappropriate, especially because very few children, less than 4%, fabricate stories of sexual abuse. But kids with traumatic histories are less likely to be believed.
Kids who have that history of adversity are the perfect victim because their offender knows they're not going to be as credible because they've had this difficult life.
There's no way with the details that I gave or the things that I said or certain locations that I could have fabricated that big of a story. There was no way.
Instead of Henry Cadle going to court, 13-year-old Taylor faced a judge for a charge of lying to police.
Wow.
She had no lawyer, only her adoptive mother, Henry Cadle's wife.
I walked into that courtroom, scared out of my mind. And
so the only person who's supporting her, there's no victim advocates there. There's no social workers, no child protective services, no nothing. No attorney ad litem, no nothing. They treated her like a complete perpetrator, and the only person she had to support her was this man's wife. And this man's wife would then give her bad information, bad advice, which was to plead guilty. This little girl was so forgotten, so left behind, so unsupported. It literally breaks my heart. And I hope to God, because I haven't heard anything in this articles that I've read, none of the articles that I've read, nor in this mini documentary, I have not heard of her taking legal action and suing Polk County. I don't know how that works. I don't know how it is in Florida. But my attention was taken off of this a little bit by a comment that somebody made in the comment section. We're going to release this for everybody, but for those of you who are watching this on a replay, this was actually a members only live. So we do this all the time. So consider becoming a member of the show so you can have access to our members only lives. But Debbie Brigham said something that really touched my soul, and I'm so sorry to hear this, Debbie. Debbie says, well, my stepdad, after I told on him for abuse from age 4 to 13, told everyone, oh, you know Debbie has an overactive imagination, and then told me once, God has forgiven both of us. And then she asked, why would he forgive me? And I believe she means, why would God need to forgive me when I did nothing wrong? Because you did nothing wrong, Debbie. That's how these predators operate. That is how they control their victims. By using guilt, by turning the victim into the bad person, making it seem like the victim is the one who asked to be victimized. Things like what that detective said, like, you want to go back to foster home? If you keep saying these things, they're going to remove you and send you back to the foster care system. Is that really what you want? You're going to hurt a lot of people. You're going to ruin a lot of lives. That's the way that detective was talking, the same way like this abuser that Debbie was talking about was talking. The same way that this young lady Taylor's uncle was talking. They all talk the same. And that's what really shocked me to the core, that a trained detective would talk to a victim in the same way that a predator would talk to the victim. But let's keep going.
My mom told me in the car to just plead guilty and get it over with.
She was sentenced to 1 year of probation with community service. She also had to write 2 apology letters, one to her abuser.
All right, so the first one is to the officer that should be ashamed of themselves. You should be ashamed of yourself, officer. Dear officer, look at this little kid. What, a little girl handwriting with the bubbles? You know how your little girls write? Well, half of y'all in the room, y'all old, but when you was a little girl, remember how you used to write little cutesy write with the bubbles and stuff? Look at this. Little girl cutesy writing. Listen to this. Dear officer, I'm sorry for my actions. I know what I did wasn't right. Therefore, I face my consequences. This will never happen again. Our criminal justice system just silenced this little girl. Now listen to this last letter right here, the one behind that one. This is the most painful one because she's calling him dad, because that's legally what he is, because he adopted her. Dear Dad, I'm sorry for what I did. I didn't stop and think of my consequences of these actions. This will not happen again. I'm sorry. She's apologizing to the man that has taken her innocence away. A man that, by the way, is her biological blood, by the way. That's her uncle. That is literally her uncle. He is her biological blood who is violating her body on a daily basis. She's apologizing for it. She's apologizing to him for what he did to her. This world is twisted, man. This world is absolutely back. I can't even curse because then they'll go ahead and demonetize this video like they're demonetizing all my videos. This world is just twisted. Let's keep going.
And the other to a sheriff's officer. Taylor's experience is like hundreds of sexual assault cases I found nationwide as part of a years-long investigation into police charging alleged victims with lying. Due to privacy laws, I could find only a handful involving children, one as young as 11. Throughout, there was a pattern of police missing crucial steps in investigations. But Taylor's case is unique because she vindicated herself.
My on-call phone rang, and it was the on-call supervisor for my unit.
So this is the detective that gets the case after the girl gets the evidence. Now, mind you, Sheriff Grady's Polk County Sheriff's Department, they handled this wonderfully. Once she had to put her body on the line, her loins on the line to film CSAM to prove that she's a victim. After she done did that, after she recorded herself getting graped, oh, they handled it just the way that they were supposed to. They did an excellent job. They did a national, international level job. I mean, the job they did, they should get a Presidential Freedom Award job for the job they did after she put her body on the line to prove to them that she's not the liar, that he's actually the bad guy. So yeah, so now this guy takes over the case after she presents them with the most damaging and disgusting evidence one could present, which is basically recording yourself getting raped. That's what she did. So now let's see how they handled it after she basically delivered the case to them on a plate.
Dempsey was the detective assigned to the case when Taylor called the police to report she was sexually assaulted again.
There was a previous investigation that the victim was on probation for, and then I also learned that new evidence would prove that some of the victim's statements were true.
Using her cell phone, 13-year-old
He's still talking with skepticism. He's trying to have that talk, that cop speak. I'm one of you. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're saying. Oh, they would prove that some of her statement. No, it's not some of her statements. It was to prove that she was falsely arrested, falsely charged, and falsely convicted of a crime she did not commit, and that in fact all of her statements were correct, that she is in fact a bona fide victim of sexual abuse, and that her abuser needs to go to jail for the rest of his life. That's what you should be saying, not that cop speak bullshit where you're like, oh, she had evidence to prove that some... Remember, on our channel, words have meanings. Some of her statements are true. No, all of her statements was true. And you, even though you had nothing to do with the original investigation, you still are a member of Polk County Sheriff's Office. You and Sheriff Grady, and most definitely that demon detective that's probably still working with them, the lady who made this little girl out to be a liar, all of you deserve her apology. That's all of you deserve to give this little girl an apology. Let's keep going.
Taylor made sure she got bulletproof evidence this time.
She had taken some photographs with her phone. She also took pictures of an empty condom box, as well as the clock on the vehicle, and then a short video of what appears to be the suspect walking around the truck.
To come and rape her.
This is the exact phone that I used in the...
Now, mind you, they talked about the photos that she took, but this app, she's going to explain it right now how the app works. She actually recorded him doing the deed as well. That's how far this girl went to get justice for herself. But let's keep going. She's such a brave woman. She's a mother now, and I feel like she's going to be a good mother. I think that she is so strong and willing to fight for herself. She's not one of those that's going to keep a cycle of abuse going. No, that abuse stops with her. And I really, after when you hear her talk, and she has like a little YouTube channel, please go look up her YouTube channel. She hasn't posted in a couple months, but she's trying to like start a lifestyle channel. But if you just go watch, even if you don't want to subscribe, because I don't think she's working on it. I don't think she's doing anything with that channel. Just go watch her talk in general, and you'll see how strong and amazing this young woman is. And I'm very proud of her, but let's keep going.
2017 case. I pulled up the camera, and on this specific phone, if you just tap the screen anywhere, it just takes a picture. So in my head, I was like basically kind of like swiping, but in reality, I was taking pictures of everything that was happening.
Just like last time, she detailed the abuse to a child welfare worker, but with one big difference.
Everything that they didn't find evidence for last time, I kind of tried to make sure that it was there this time, just so that way my story would get believed.
The photos she took with her phone were graphic.
So it was very shocking to see that, very sad, but a fantastic thing that she was able to collect it.
In Henry Cadle's recorded statement to Dempsey, he was adamant he was innocent.
I got the impression that because of the previous investigation and the result of it, that he felt somewhat secure. But I want to ask you plainly, did you touch her?
No, hell no.
Now's the time to tell me, so I can get out in front of it. We can try to handle, figure out what's going on.
No, nothing happened.
Nasty bastard.
At 4:30 a.m., the detective confronted Henry Cadle with the evidence.
Hey, Henry. Hey. You wanted to see what I got here? The pictures?
Sure.
See this?
Okay. Okay.
You know who that is?
Yeah.
Who?
It's me.
Henry Cadle was sentenced to 17 years in prison for sexual battery of a minor. Taylor's criminal charge was overturned.
I don't remember any other case where the victim had the forethought or the intelligence to collect their own evidence. And
listen, I have had cases where victims, many cases, in fact, it happens a lot, especially in this day and age, where victims will come to me with evidence of their abuse. I've never had a case where a victim felt that she wasn't believed and she wasn't supported, that she had to I don't think this young lady put herself in a situation. I think it's just regular course of business for the uncle to go and grape her. But to feel like she needed to prepare herself by downloading a special app to then record the deed, the evil deed, in order for her to believe later, because law enforcement went through such great lengths to call her a liar, not just by saying, hey, we don't believe you, or hey, we're closing your case out, but to go ahead and actually adjudicate her and have her convicted of a crime she did not do, then put her back into the custody of her abuser so that he can now abuse her more, where she now has to actually bring that evidence to the forefront and prove, listen, I'm a victim. I've never seen that before. I've never heard of it. And it's sad that it had to happen in Taylor's case. We should be ashamed of ourselves as a society that we had to do that to Taylor. We all did that. All our tax dollars go into these police departments across this country. We did that to Taylor as a collective society. Let's keep going.
To be so thorough, just unbelievable amount of presence of mind that she showed.
I reached out to Detective Melissa Turnage and her boss, Grady Judd, multiple times to ask for an interview. Turnage never responded, and Judd's office declined an interview and didn't answer repeatedly.
See, that's what I'm saying. This is what I talked about. Like, be careful. We talked about this in the last live that we did. Be careful who you worship, people. Because you talk about Sheriff Grady Judd to people, and they'll talk about him like he's a rock star. He should have went on this publication. This is PBS. This is not some unknown. This is not the Strategic Eye Show reaching out to Sheriff Grady for a comment. This is PBS. He should have reached out. He should have said, we screwed up. We're sorry. We want to make it right. We want to change our policy. We want to do different things. We messed up. That's what he should have did. And it's about character. So what he did, he stayed silent. I don't expect the detective to comment because she probably can't even, according to the rules and regulations of her department, respond. She can't. No department will allow you to respond about a case in the media without them giving permission. But the sheriff could have responded, because if he caught somebody on a high-speed chase or he caught some other pedo or something, he would go on his podium and he would give a press conference and he'd crack jokes and he'd say his one-liners and all the stuff that he's known for and publicize himself like he's known for and get media attention off of it. But when he screws up, he has nothing to say. And he screwed up in the worst way, because if you fail one victim, you fail them all. It's not a failure to not be able to solve a case. We have a constitution, and we have to gather evidence that could pass that constitutional muster, give you probable cause to go ahead and arrest somebody. Sometimes victims are victims, and we can't prove it. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means we can't prove it. It's a whole nother thing when you lock a victim up and you call her a liar to her face and you lock her up like what they did by giving her probation. That's a whole different animal. And Polk County did that under the tutelage of Sheriff Grady. And he didn't even have the balls to come on PBS and say, I'm sorry. Let's keep going.
He did requests for comment.
Where was a person for Taylor? Where was a person to stand up to say stop and stop it now?
Since 2002, Florida State Senator Lauren Book has been working on state bills aimed at protecting victims of child abuse. She sent a letter to the sheriff's office requesting they look into how the system failed Taylor the first time around.
It happened to Taylor, and Taylor is enough to fix the system.
Senator Book says charging Taylor and letting her be assaulted again was entirely preventable, and properly trained professionals should have intervened at multiple levels.
That's right.
You need to have people who are properly trained and who are in it to do the right thing and really walk a survivor through this process.
So let's talk about being trauma-informed and what that approach means.
Jerry Seitz trains investigators and law enforcement officers on how to help children who come forward with allegations of sexual abuse. She believes this is what could prevent a detective from doing this to another child like Taylor.
Certainly forensic interviewing has just really...
Well, I'm gonna sum up what could have... First of all, what she did wasn't a forensic interview, so this lady's correct. Forensic interviewing would have prevented what this detective did, but I'm going to sum up what that detective should have had that could have prevented this whole thing. Common sense and decency. Common sense and decency. Tapping into her own femininity, not to make this a man-woman thing, but having some empathy. That's what women are known for. That's what makes women better than men. make you guys the greatest thing that God ever created is empathy. Empathy. Having a little empathy and humility, ma'am, would have prevented you from treating this little girl like the enemy when she was actually a victim. But let's see what this young lady has to say, this professional.
Made a huge difference in child abuse cases, having people who are highly trained and understand linguistics and child development and how to approach kids so that they can gather accurate information in a neutral, supportive way.
Now a mom of two, Taylor is healing by giving her children the kind of safety she never had. She says she never received an apology from authorities, but hopes they use the lessons from her case going forward.
I want for them to understand what they did and to clearly see where they messed up, to truly see what happened and fix it.
Taylor, you need to get an attorney. That's what you need. You need to get an attorney. All I gotta say.
Because no child should ever have to go through anything that I went through.
For the PBS NewsHour and the Center for Investigative Reporting, I'm Rachel DeLeon in Polk County, Florida.
Rachel, you did an excellent job. He's a well-known investigative journalist. Thank you for bringing this story to the forefront, because it was not widely covered until Rachel did this documentary on PBS. Since then, this has gone viral. And this story that happened in 2017 and resulted in a conviction in 2019 for this monster, Henry Paris Cadle, nobody talked about it. So this is the beast. That's the beast right there. Sexual predator, this designation, sexual predator, name Henry Paris Cadle. Status is confinement. Department of Corrections, A00311. Date of birth, 2/24/1959. Race, white. Sex, male. Hair, blonde. Doesn't have any hair anymore, but it would be blonde if he had it. Eyes, blue. Height, 5'10". Weight, 210 pounds. His current address is the Department of Corrections. He was convicted of sexual battery of a child by an adult, which, if he had did that 2-3 years later, he would have gotten a death penalty. That's how serious his crimes was. It's the same crime that Stephen Stearns is currently facing in his sexual abuse trial. Now let's go ahead and click this and see if we get some additional information. Confinement, confined to prison. All right, cool. Let's click this hyperlink. See what they got going on here. It goes to the Florida statute. And last one, let's click this. See what it sends us. Florida Department of Corrections website. Got you. All right, guys. I appreciate you guys joining me. You guys are great, man. I'm sorry I had to hit you guys with that heavy one. But I wanted to get that one off my chest because I talked about the Sheriff Grady situation. And I wanted to make sure you guys had the full story to understand why I was so passionate and animated about how Sheriff Grady's organization betrayed this young woman. Now you guys got the full story. You go ahead and definitely Google her name, Taylor Cadle, for you get additional information and articles on her story. And big up to Taylor Cadle for being such a warrior, for being such an amazing girl, and for standing up for herself when nobody else would stand up for her. So guys, please consider becoming a member of the Strategic Eyes Show. We're over here trying to give a voice to the voiceless. Also consider becoming a member of our Patreon. And we'll see you on the next one. And hit that like button too. Let's add that to the mix. We'll see you guys on the next one. Strategic is out of here. Peace.